we've talked about the fact that the worship pastor, worship leader role is one of the highest turnover roles in the church.
I did not know that.
Yeah, I mean, I've been a worship
for
pastor.
real. Why do you think
churches.
that is? Wait, I'm hijacking you. This is your
podcast.
podcast.
You go.
Why do you think that is?
Yeah, why do you think that is?
God woke me up the beginning of this year. My birthday's on December 31st, and he kind of gives me a new vision for the year as we're starting a new year, and I'm getting a year older. One more gray hair, one more new year. And the righteous indignation in me started when I was on Instagram, and a bunch of my worship leader friends around the same age were all of a sudden posting their real estate photos. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, why is so-and-so selling houses?
Yep. Church needs that guy.
Well, the world doesn't need more realtors. And if you're a realtor, if you
God bless you.
God bless you. But why aren't worship pastors making it? I think a couple things happened in my generation. I think a lot of worship leaders got on stages to get bigger ones. Chris Tomlin, the worship ministry was becoming now a worship genre. And so I could lead in this little church, and I could one day elevate to a different level. And that's not what God has called us to as pastors first, who happen to pastor through music. And so I think when that doesn't happen for a worship leader, and that's the reason they got on, and I didn't get the record deal and I didn't have the song, I'm probably done and I'm going to go make more money elsewhere. I think there were a lot of senior pastors who knew that they needed worship as a component in their services, and so they just tried to find the most talented person and not the best pastor. So then when they got frustrated that leadership wasn't happening,
that's a big deal.
They just went and found somebody else. And or I think that there wasn't a higher mantle put on the worship pastor to be a pastor first. That when that guy got older or the muscle got weaker, as it, my vocal is a muscle. And with age, it changes. And now I look up across the table as a senior leader. Well, have you led anything other than songs? And maybe that's to the fault of the pastor who hasn't given them more, whether it's the title, I expect more of you. So that when they get into that transitional period of what am I going to do because my muscle isn't working the same way, I don't have another job for me in the church. And so they've left. So I've made it my mission, like my social media is like, how do I get the 20-year-old me to stay
That's cool.
and still be leading when he's 50?
Yep.
And I think some of those things anecdotally are probably at play, and we're losing a generation. But I do see a rich generation of 20-somethings getting back in for the right reasons and contributing at a high level. I think there also was probably a season where worship leaders probably felt like the dog and pony show, kind of warm up the message, and that's what they were asked to do. Hey, don't talk, just sing.
I literally I was in a meeting one time and a senior pastor said, "Yeah, our worship leaders sing. No, they don't talk." Like literally didn't want them to say a word from the stage.
To a degree, I agree, but I do think that I have to teach people, and so I have to be afforded the trust to be able to do that. And there was some point where I sucked at it, but a pastor looked at me and says, "I need you to help me pastor in this way. I'm going to help you get better at it." And so I think that's at play too. And they just probably got tired of, hey, I'm going to sing a couple songs and play a weird cover song before the service begins. And there's got to be something deeper in my calling, and there is. And so I think it's a both and. I think pastors have to think more of their worship pastors and give more trust and expectation. And I think worship pastors have to think more of themselves.
So what does that look like for you when you say we need to lean more into the pastoral role of being a worship pastor? What does that look like practically?
I have to understand that we are better together. The hour is better together. So there is not a weekend.
75 minutes.
That's hilarious, actually.
Never mind. Go ahead.
There isn't a weekend that goes by where I don't look at his notes before he gets up and preaches.
Yeah.
And so I'm not trying to preach his message before he preaches it. But if I can lean the worship set that's already been planned for weeks in the direction I know he's going, subtly in terms of what am I highlighting as a theme that's emerging. We're going to move better together. I have to recognize day one that he's been called to lead this church. And so two visions create division. And so if I can't come under that vision and push that down to my team, we're already at a deficit. And so I think that we have to teach worship pastors that they have a mantle and responsibility to think that way. And whether it's the worship or the senior pastor giving them the ability to do that, or they just need to be taught. And quite frankly, like you think about it, a growing church, we need great worship. And so those hustle days, you're just trying to find anybody that can carry a tune in a bucket and build a band and retain and attract great talent.
Been there.
But there has to be a day where we get back to the desk and we teach. And we say, hey, this is what it means to be a pastor. Who's the last person you took out for coffee who wasn't on your team, who could serve your vision, but actually you pastored them? My wife and I could tell you about people that we've had stay at our house in the midst of losing their marriage because we're a pastor before I'm trying to fill a PCO invite. And so it has to be taught, and then we have to, with expectation, hire people with the understanding that this is what you're called to do. It just so happens that you're good musically so that you can pastor. And we'll get more into that too. I think the preparation and the attention to detail in your craft has to rise to a level, not so that I look good, but so that I can get up on a stage and not be flustered by anything technically, so that I can pastor. So that the good news, the gospel, can be clear and I'm not a distraction to it. So there's a lot of teaching that play. That's one of the things I feel called to in this decade of my life is like, and maybe longer, is how do I teach a younger generation who they are when they step into this calling?
So talking about that, because you mentioned like we find the singers, right? We find the talent. We aren't necessarily looking for the pastors when you're a small church, just trying to get someone up there that doesn't embarrass you, right? Like we understand that it's a real thing. Someone gets up there, sings out of tune. It's tough during a church service. So your advice to pastors who are trying to look for that role, right? Who are trying to find people to bring up into a pastoral role. We look for heart first. We look for talent first. We really have to look for both at the same time. And how do you develop that and balance that?
Yeah, so, we're at Lake Point now. That's a larger church, but it really wasn't that long ago. Like I was at a 70-person church plant. So I've been very much through the season of, hey man, I literally just need somebody who can sing a song this weekend, and I would just let some guys off the hook. Like, hey man, it's okay to be in that season. I would say it's okay to be in that season. I would say, to Chris's point, there were seasons of our church's life where I very intentionally would title a guy, this is our worship leader, and I intentionally did not use the term worship pastor because I wanted to be careful. The title redirects how people think about the person. And when we were in seasons where, hey man, this is a guy that I feel good enough about his character and his family and who he is as a man for him to be on stage, or else he wouldn't be on stage. I don't know him well enough to know if I want to point my whole church to that guy and say that's one of your pastors. I would just title him worship leader. Yep. There's some of the things that when we got in, Chris is going to be able to answer this question better than me, but I can give a pastor's perspective. Some of the things that we were looking for is, man, is the biggest little death trap in hiring ever is you never ever bypass character for talent. It's always that is, especially when it's resources are thin, you're scrapping to try to grow the thing. The temptation is always to bypass character for talent, and I promise you that will blow up in your face. So don't do that. There's a reason that if you want to know what's a quick way for me to get a little test of who a guy is, there's a reason that in Titus 1 and 1 Timothy 3 that almost half of the words about pastoral qualifications are about a guy's family. Man, Chris has great kids, and Chris is a great dad. That tells me a lot about Chris. So it's just real quick, just check out a guy's family. What's that looking like? And then the other thing that I would say, especially from when I was in that season where it's hey man, you're trying to scale. Okay, we're a 200-person church. we're a 700, we're a 1,300 person church, whatever it is, man, we had a lot of times, we were in the Nashville area, so, it was not as hard as some other areas to find somebody who could play a guitar.
They're tripping down the street at that point.
Yeah.
There's so many good musicians out there.
So like there was a lot of times where we'd be looking at 2 or 3 different guys, and the axiom that and this is one reason that he's special. The axiom that over time I developed internally was always bet on leadership. And what I mean by that is like, man, this guy has an amazing, like literally sometimes in Nashville, this guy was on season 3 of The Voice. Mm-hmm. And he can crush a song. But this guy actually can build and lead volunteer teams. Mm-hmm. And And is his vocal as good as that guy? Nope, it's not. But over time, I just feel like the axiom always wins. Always bet on leadership. Those are 3 quick things. What would you add?
Yeah, we've all heard the phrase competency will get you in the door, character will keep you.
That's right.
Mm-hmm. I think the same is true in this hiring. I think when a pastor, it is in a place where it's like PJ said, dude, we need a worship leader. Mm-hmm. I think you can rush and forget that very natural and real law to be true. And so you can put somebody in a pretty high position just because you need a body and you need talent and you need to have it happen great every weekend, and kind of be tone deaf to maybe some of the character questions you have, thinking that that's going to fix itself over time. Don't rush that. Mm-hmm. I would rather, like he said, whether it's terming the person worship leader or even just contracting for a season that's a little longer than you're comfortable with, because you're going to get talent, and that will quickly run out. That will quickly be usurped by somebody who's more talented than that person. But the character will be the thing that keeps that person on your team for a long time. And don't forget, will attract like.
Yeah, that's right.
Like attracts like.
That's very
and
good.
So if it's like, we're kind of taking a gamble on the character thing and the ability to pastor, well, you're going to get more people just like him. Mm-hmm. And so, again, in a season where there may be desperation at play, you're just trying to make things work. I always encourage pastors, hey, dude, if you don't have a full team, but you got one amazing person on a keyboard and a vocal, do that for a season. Mm-hmm. Maybe it won't grow your church as exponentially fast as you want it to, but you won't have to pick up the wake of damage behind that leader eventually, because it's coming. Mm-hmm. And I think we're too short-sighted to forget that, because it's coming. And so we just try to put talent. So I don't rush processes. Do not ignore flags in interviews. I've heard a leader say, hire slow, fire fast. Mm-hmm. So if a thing is a subtle blinking red light in an interview, it will be a loud alarm when that person's on your team.
That's good.
Don't ignore it.
Yeah, I'll add one last thing. He mentioned it earlier, and I just want to go over the verbal highlighter. Is, probably because of the prominence of the stage time, more than any other role in the church, I have found before here, more than any other role in the church, that's the one where there might be a temptation to want to have your own vision for what the weekend should look like instead of coming under the senior pastor's vision. So he was mentioning a second ago, hey man, I understand Josh is called to something I'm not, and my job is to come behind that and support it. And that's one reason that God blesses Chris's ministry. You got to make sure if you're hiring that role, you got to make sure that guy gets the spiritual dynamic of, I'm coming under someone else's vision and anointing, and it's my job to submit to that. And if I can't, I need to stay away. I'll give one example of this with details omitted enough to protect the guilty. So when we were in Nashville, we hired a guy that came from a prominent place and had a prominent, a bit of a name from some, and we came and 2 weeks in, I've told you this story.
Yeah, his name was Chris.
No, that's not true. That's not true. 2 weeks in, I'm like, bro, this is different. And this is not what we talked about. Just some very interesting musical choices.
That's a funny phrase. This is not what we talked
This
about.
is not what we talked about. And so like I was very clear. Another thing, when you're leading somebody, they deserve clarity from you. Clarity is kindness. It's impossible for people to hit a target you didn't draw for them. So like literally it got to the spot where I felt like, man, it's not fair for me to like expect this guy to hit a target. So I was like, here's what I'm gonna do. I told him, for the next 3 weeks, I'm not good at this, but I'm gonna give you, I think it was like 10. I'm gonna give you like 10 songs that like I think are great for our church. They're theologically aligned and I like them. So in order to help us sync up, I'm just gonna give you songs, and any song you choose from these 10, totally good, man. And that was just not his vibe. So he picked a song the very next weekend that was not on our 10. And it was super weird. It's a weird song. And I
Can you be more specific?
Nope, I will not. No,
Okay.
I won't. It was kind of like an indie folk vibe. Okay, that's all I'll do.
Okay.
So I called him in, and he'd only been there for like 5 weeks, and I asked him like, hey man, give him the songs, and he was like, well, one of the songs I'd originally chosen was a Chris Tomlin song, and this is what I have an adopted daughter. I have 2 adopted daughters that are African American. This is literally what he said, and I can joke about it now. He said in my office, he said, you asking me to sing Chris Tomlin would be like me asking your daughters to quit being black. And I went, man, thank you for your last 5 weeks. You're done here. And I let him go after 5 weeks.
Wow.
But it was like, that's that thing of like, hey man.
Slow to hire, quick to fire.
Yes.
I was like, thank you for your time here. We have, you're done here, my friend. But that's that thing of like, hey man, make sure that person understands the spiritual dynamics of it's my job to come in under the leader. When you do that, God will bless you, because that's how the kingdom works.
Yeah. The leadership, the relentless pursuit of leadership development in a worship department. I think that seems key to that high turnover rate that we're talking about. And I think it's difficult for a fast growing church to go from a church plant to scaling up to hundreds and thousands and then a staff of dozens of people, where everybody needs to be constantly kind of thinking how to get to that next level of leadership, and it can happen fast. I mean, even in our little organization, for our team, I'm constantly having to seek development myself and for our key team members of like, how do you think to that kind of next layer of leadership, or if especially when you have like org charts that start to form and things like that, because if that leadership isn't healthy, that's when people start to burn out. There's really bad systems, and it's just all downhill from there.
It's good, Jake.
So we see it a lot, and sadly, in like, I think a lot of those churches that are growing, which is a good thing, but that growing process can be nasty, especially when it comes to that dynamic.